7 Best Energy ETFs to Buy Now. Energy ETFs can help investors hedge against unexpected inflation or geopolitical risks. The US stock market may be sitting at all-time highs, but plenty of potential volatility remains on the horizon heading into 2025. Geopolitical unrest is a significant concern, with reports of North Korean troops joining Russian forces in Ukraine, escalating tensions between Israel, Iran and Lebanon, and the recent overthrow of the Assad regime by Syrian rebels, alongside Israel's troop deployments and airstrikes in the region. Meanwhile, domestic inflation is proving stubborn. November saw a second consecutive monthly increase for the Consumer Price Index, CPI, to 2.7% from October's 2.6%, driven by slower-than-expected declines in gasoline and fuel oil prices, while natural gas prices ticked upward. A simple way to hedge against these risks is by allocating part of your portfolio to energy stocks. Energy companies tend to perform well during inflationary periods as rising oil and gas prices boost their revenues, while geopolitical risks can tighten supply and further support prices. Unlike commodity futures, energy stocks let you avoid pitfalls like contango, which occurs when futures prices are higher than the expected spot price. Contango often erodes returns when traders roll futures contracts over, making energy stocks a more straightforward choice for long-term investors. Finally, energy companies today boast significantly improved fundamentals. After weathering the boom and bust cycles of the past, many large players have strengthened their balance sheets, reduced debt and improved margins, making them more resilient to the ups and downs of oil prices. The net result is improved free cash flow, which improves their capacity for dividend growth and buybacks. Higher quality energy companies are very profitable today. Many sell at single-digit multiples and are returning capital to investors at an accelerated rate, says David James, managing director at Coastal Bridge Advisors. For example, ConocoPhillips, ticker COP, is on record guiding that they will return their entire market cap to investors over the next decade through share buybacks and dividends. Here are 7 of the best energy exchange-traded funds, ETFs, to buy for 2025. Vanguard Energy ETF. About Vanguard Energy ETF. The investment seeks to track the performance of the MSCI US Investable Market Index, IMI/Energy 25/50ths. The fund employs an indexing investment approach designed to track the performance of the MSCI US Investable Market Index, IMI/Energy 25/50ths, an index made up of stocks of large, mid-size, and small US companies within the energy sector, as classified under the GICS. The advisor attempts to replicate the target index by seeking to invest all, or substantially all, of its assets in the stocks that make up the index, in order to hold each stock in approximately the same proportion as its weighting in the index. The fund is non-diversified. Rankings. U.S. News evaluated 36 equity energy ETFs and 14 make our best fit list. Our list highlights the best passively managed funds for long-term investors. Rankings are assigned based on comparisons with best fit funds in this category. The Energy Select Sector SPDR ETF. About the Energy Select Sector SPDR ETF. The investment seeks to provide investment results that, before expenses, correspond generally to the price and yield performance of publicly traded equity securities of companies in the Energy Select Sector Index. In seeking to track the performance of the index, the fund employs a replication strategy. It generally invests substantially all, but at least 95%, of its total assets in the securities comprising the index. The index includes companies that have been identified as energy companies by the GICS, including securities of companies from the following industries: oil, gas and consumable fuels, and energy equipment and services. It is non-diversified. Rankings. U.S. News evaluated 36 equity energy ETFs and 14 make our best fit list. Our list highlights the best passively managed funds for long-term investors. Rankings are assigned based on comparisons with best fit funds in this category. iShares Global Energy ETF. About iShares Global Energy ETF. The investment seeks to track the investment results of the S&P Global 1200 Energy 4.5/22.5/45 capped index TM. The fund generally invests at least 80% of its assets in the component securities of its underlying index and in investments that have economic characteristics that are substantially identical to the component securities of its underlying index, and may invest up to 20% of its assets in certain futures, options and swap contracts, cash and cash equivalents. The index is designed to measure the performance of global equities in the energy sector. The fund is non-diversified. iShares MSCI Global Energy Producers ETF. About iShares MSCI Global Energy Producers ETF. The investment seeks to track the investment results of the MSCI ACWI Select Energy Producers Investable Market Index, IMI. The fund generally will invest at least 80% of its assets in the component securities of the underlying index and in investments that have economic characteristics that are substantially identical to the component securities of the underlying index. The index measures the combined performance of equity securities of companies in both developed and emerging markets that are primarily engaged in the business of energy exploration and production. The fund is non-diversified. Rankings. U.S. News evaluated 36 equity energy ETFs and 14 make our best fit list. Our list highlights the best passively managed funds for long-term investors. Rankings are assigned based on comparisons with best fit funds in this category. Invesco Energy Exploration and PROD ETF. About Invesco Energy Exploration and PROD ETF. The investment seeks to track the investment results, before fees and expenses, of the Dynamic Energy Exploration and Production Intellidex SM Index. The fund invests at least 90% of its total assets in securities that comprise the underlying index. The index was composed of common stocks of U.S. companies involved in the exploration and production of natural resources used to produce energy. These companies are engaged principally in exploration, extraction and production of crude oil and natural gas from land-based or offshore wells. The fund is non-diversified. Rankings. U.S. News evaluated 36 equity energy ETFs and 14 make our best fit list. Our list highlights the best passively managed funds for long-term investors. Rankings are assigned based on comparisons with best fit funds in this category. Invesco S&P 500 Equal Weight Energy ETF. About Invesco S&P 500 Equal Weight Energy ETF. The investment seeks to track the investment results, before fees and expenses, of the S&P 500 Equal Weight Energy Index, the underlying index. The fund generally will invest at least 90% of its total assets in securities that comprise the underlying index. The underlying index is composed of all of the components of the S&P 500 Energy Index, an index that contains the common stocks of all companies included in the S&P 500 index that are classified as members of the energy sector, as defined according to the Global Industry Classification Standard, GICS. Global X MLP and Energy Infrastructure ETF. About Global X MLP and Energy Infrastructure ETF. The investment seeks to provide investment results that correspond generally to the price and yield performance, before fees and expenses, of the sole active MLP and Energy Infrastructure Index. The fund invests at least 80% of its total assets in the securities of the index. It also invests at least 80% of its total assets in securities of master limited partnerships and energy infrastructure corporations. The fund's 80% investment policies are non-fundamental and require 60 days prior written notice to shareholders before they can be changed. The index tracks the performance of midstream energy infrastructure, MLPs, and corporations. It is non-diversified. Rankings. U.S. News evaluated 21 energy limited partnership ETFs and 5 make our best fit list. Our list highlights the best passively managed funds for long-term investors. Rankings are assigned based on comparisons with best fit funds in this category.